Okay, so you sent us in some really interesting stuff about decentralized digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to dive straight into one of the kind of foundational ideas here,
Yeah.
BitGold, which was conceived by Nick Szabo.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to understand its core concepts and why it's considered such a significant precursor to the cryptocurrencies that we know and use now.
Right.
The key aim of BitGold, just to lay it out there, was to create a digital currency that would be totally independent of any central authority.
Exactly. And it's really fascinating when you look at the core innovation that Szabo was proposing here. It's this concept of proof of work.
Okay.
So he was suggesting that we could use these computational puzzles, essentially complex mathematical challenges,
Right.
to actually generate digital value.
Interesting.
So solving these puzzles would not be easy, right? It would require real computational effort, and the result would be a unique digital bit.
I see.
And this was such a radical departure from the traditional way of thinking, moving away from relying on trust in institutions. Right.
To relying on this concept of cryptographic proof of work.
So you're saying these bits weren't just created, out of thin air, like
Right.
there was an actual cost associated with it in terms
Right.
of computing power, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So then what happens? Like once these, unique bits are created, what's next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, because we start to see the early seeds of what would later become blockchain technology.
Right.
Szabo envisioned this public registry where each of these generated bits would be time-stamped,
Mm-hmm.
and its ownership would be meticulously recorded,
Okay.
creating this transparent and auditable chain of ownership,
I see.
a history of who possessed each bit, right?
Yeah.
And that's a foundational element that Bitcoin and many other cryptocurrencies would later adopt and refine.
So we've got these provably created bits. They're publicly recorded, but how do people actually use them? How do
Yeah.
they transact?
So ownership was transferred using digital signatures.
Okay.
And this was crucial, right?
Because it ensured that only the current owner of a bit could authorize a transaction.
Got it?
And the system was inherently designed to prevent this problem of double spending.
Right.
Because remember, creating new valid bits was inherently costly, so anyone trying to reuse a spent bit
Yeah.
would have to replicate that significant computational work, making it practically economically infeasible.
So they'd have to solve the problem all over again,
Exactly.
which would just be way too much work and therefore
Only too expensive.
impractical.
Right, and Szabo even went a step further.
Right.
He actually considered a market mechanism
Interesting.
to help stabilize the value of these bits.
So it all sounds good in theory, but it never really took off, did it?
It didn't, and Szabo himself, he was very aware of the limitations.
Right.
He identified some key unresolved challenges.
Like what?
Well, scalability was a big one.
Uh-huh.
How could the system handle a growing number of transactions?
Right.
Make sure it remains efficient.
Efficient, yeah.
And then there was the issue of synchronizing this public registry
across the entire network.
across a massive distributed network, exactly.
Yeah.
And then this is a big one, the risk of what we call Sybil attacks,
Okay.
where one user could potentially create a whole bunch of fake identities
Oh, I see.
to try and game the system,
To undermine it.
undermine its integrity, exactly.
And so all these challenges,
Yeah.
despite these hurdles, it's pretty clear that BitGold was like a hugely influential idea.
Yeah.
Like, how directly did it pave the way for Bitcoin?
Well, the connection is undeniable.
Okay.
I mean, Bitcoin directly adopted those core concepts we talked about.
Right.
Proof of work for creating new coins and a public distributed ledger, that blockchain,
Yeah.
for recording those transactions.
Right.
And that fundamental goal of decentralization,
Mm-hmm.
of creating a true peer-to-peer digital currency.
Yeah.
It's a clear inheritance from BitGold.
And this influence, is this why there's so much speculation about, Nick Szabo being Satoshi Nakamoto?
Exactly.
The mysterious...
Pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The conceptual overlap is so significant that it's led to, widespread speculation.
Right.
However, it is important to note that Szabo has consistently denied any involvement in creating Bitcoin.
Right. So it's still a bit of a mystery.
It is.
So Bitcoin essentially took this blueprint of BitGold and kind of built upon it, right?
Yeah.
What were the key improvements that allowed Bitcoin to really succeed where BitGold didn't fully materialize?
So Bitcoin introduced some really critical refinements.
Okay.
It implemented a robust consensus mechanism.
Okay.
Most notably, this thing called the mining difficulty adjustment,
Hmm.
which automatically regulates the rate at which new coins are created
Right.
and transactions are verified, making the network much more resilient.
Gotcha. And anything else?
Yeah. Bitcoin also established a fixed supply cap, which is a fundamental aspect of its monetary policy.
Right.
But that wasn't a defined feature of BitGold.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So to wrap this deep dive up, I think it's safe to say that BitGold was a really pioneering attempt
Absolutely.
at a decentralized digital currency.
Yeah.
And its core innovations, like proof of work and a public registry, were revolutionary,
They were.
even though there were, some practical challenges that remained.
For sure.
But its intellectual DNA, it's clearly visible in Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating to me is how these foundational ideas, even in their theoretical stage,
Yeah.
laid such a powerful groundwork for everything that's come after.
And that leads us to a final thought for you.
Yeah.
So considering the significant challenges that BitGold faced, issues like scalability and network synchronization,
Yeah.
how crucial do you think Bitcoin's added mechanisms were in achieving widespread adoption? Or are there, still some fundamental hurdles out there that these decentralized digital currencies really need to overcome?
That's a great question.
It gives you something to think about.
It really does.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was my pleasure.
See you next time.
See ya.